Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. A woman is charged with murder following the death of a 5-year-old boy. Health authorities make another plea to the elderly as new COVID cases climb above 10,000 again. And there are plans to tighten penalties for abandoning vehicles in public areas. A woman has been charged with murder following the death of her 5-year-old son, who had serious injuries all over his body. The woman reportedly tried to jump off her building after alerting police that the boy was unconscious. Firefighters and police rescued a woman who was clinging to the window of a building in Shanshui-Po early this morning. The 33-year-old woman was sent to the Caritas Medical Center in China-Taiwan and was found to be 5 months pregnant. Earlier at about 1 a.m., the woman reportedly called police to say her 5-year-old son was unconscious in their 100-square-foot flat on Shek Kim Mei Street. Officers arriving in the subdivided unit found a boy lying on the bed. The boy was taken to Kwangwa Hospital, where he was confirmed dead.
This
afternoon, police said the woman had been arrested and charged with murder after more than 30 severe injuries were found on the boy's body. He also appeared malnourished as he had been relatively thin for his age. An autopsy will determine the cause of death. Officers said the boy was healthy in January, the last time he went to kindergarten. He was said to have emotional issues and often threw tantrums. Police suspect that after the 5th wave, when schools switched to online teaching, the boy was locked inside a room and abused. The woman's 2 other children, an 8-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy, were not abused. Their father left the family but provided some money on his rare visits. But it wasn't enough for the woman to make ends meet, and she couldn't afford the rent. Police said she refused to meet social workers and did not receive welfare assistance. Further arrests have not been ruled out. The death of an elderly man whose daughter ignored doctors' advice has spurred a renewed call for senior citizens to protect themselves against COVID. The daily caseload, meanwhile, again exceeded 10,000. Isaac Lee reports.
Daily infections have once more entered 5-digit territory. There were 10,426 cases today, more than 98% of which were locally acquired. Health authorities refused to predict when the latest wave will peak, saying the more contagious BA.5 subvariant has become the predominant strain. Another 7 people died after contracting the virus. They included a 77-year-old man who tested positive on August the 16th. When the hospital authority called him 2 days later, his daughter said he didn't need medication since he only had mild symptoms. But his situation worsened 1 week later, and he had difficulty walking and eating. He fell into a coma on Thursday and died the same day in hospital. The authorities stressed that it is important for patients, especially those aged 60 or above, to receive treatment as early as possible.
所有我哋已知嘅文獻咧，都顯示到咧。
For all the literature available, it shows that after people take the COVID medication, it will reduce the chance of hospitalization and, in particular, fatality. It's effective by as much as 80%. So if something could lower your risk by 80%, I'm sure you would go for it.
Lau also said 2 infants who were admitted to a hospital earlier for COVID have improved, but are still in critical or serious condition. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
Health expert David Hui says it will take at least 2 more months before Hong Kong can cancel hotel quarantine for arrivals.
Well, at the moment, we are actually having another wave. The number of cases is approaching 10,000. So hopefully when the BA.5 wave peak around September, then the case would come down. At the same time, if we can continue to lift the vaccination rates to generate better protection, then hopefully by November it will be in a much better situation.
Hospital Authority Chief Executive Tony Ko, meanwhile, said public hospitals are under tremendous pressure as they are treating around 2,700 COVID patients. He urged people to get vaccinated since nearly half of those admitted to hospital have not been triple jabbed. Ko said there are no plans currently to designate certain hospitals as treatment facilities for COVID, a strategy that was adopted during the 5th wave. More than 200 home buyers are demanding compensation because the completion of a residential complex in Cheng Kung O has been delayed. They gathered outside the Mongkok office of the developer to submit a petition. Their flats in Manor Hill were supposed to be handed over to them last Sunday, but they were informed the day before that the units won't be available until March. Kowloon Development blamed the pandemic and the poor weather conditions for the delay, but it refused to compensate buyers, saying the contract was not breached. The Transport Department is getting tough with people who abandon unwanted vehicles in public areas. They may even be jailed. Isaac Lee reports.
It's common to see abandoned motorcycles in back lanes. The eyesore triggered a tongue lashing from the ombudsman, who criticized government departments for not carrying out their enforcement duties effectively. In response, the Transport Department proposed an amendments bill to penalize drivers who dispose of their unwanted cars on the streets. Speaking with Reynald Chen on cable TV's program Let's Talk, Transport Commissioner Rosanna Law said under the amendments, those who do not extend or cancel their expired licenses within 2 years will be prosecuted. Drivers will be obliged to handle the disposal of their own vehicles, even if they choose to give up their licenses.
咁會唔會可以有監禁呢個即係可能性呢？一定會有。
Law said violators could be fined more than $10,000, while serious offenders may even be imprisoned. But she rejected suggestions to provide areas for motorists to temporarily park their unwanted vehicles and scrapping them in bulk. She explained that it is inappropriate to use public funds to solve the problems of drivers. The amended ordinance will come into force after 2 years if the Legislative Council gives the green lights. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
A solemn ceremony was held this morning to mark the 77th anniversary of the defeat of Japan in the Second World War. Among those attending the event at the Hong Kong City Hall Memorial Garden were Chief Executive John Lee, his predecessors Carrie Lam, Donna Chan, and Leung Chun-ying, as well as senior government officials. There was a 21-gun salute to those who died fighting Japanese aggression, followed by 2 minutes of silence. The participants, including representatives of mainland official organizations, the Legislative Council, and the judiciary, bowed before the memorial shrine at the end of the event. China has warned of strong action if the United States supplies Taiwan with weapons worth $1.1 billion. The package includes radar warning systems, anti-ship missiles, and air-to-air missiles. Washington says the weapons are intended to modernize Taiwan's military, but Beijing warns that it will send a wrong message to independence advocates. The proposed sale, which comes a month after U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited the island, is expected to be approved by the largely pro-Taiwan American Congress. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, is concerned about the safety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, as Russia and Ukraine accuse each other of firing rockets into the area around it.
The military activity and operations are increasing in that part of the country, and this worries me a lot. This worries me a lot. There are references to offensives, counter-offensives. I don't want to get into that because it's not my domain, but it is obvious and we all know it. And everybody acknowledges it on site.
After inspecting the facility, the IAEA said its physical integrity had been violated several times. The plant in southern Ukraine is the largest in Europe. It was occupied by Russian troops shortly after the invasion of the country. But Ukrainian technicians continue to operate the facility. Sri Lanka's former president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, has returned to the capital, Colombo, after fleeing the country in July. He was escorted from the airport under heavy security. Rajapaksa fled after mass protests erupted as country suffered an economic meltdown. He tendered his resignation when he was in Singapore before moving on to Thailand. His return triggered concerns of renewed unrest. On to the weather now. The sleeting weekend continues with mercury hitting 33 degrees tomorrow. Even hotter on Monday. Expect some relief midweek. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Saturday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Good night.